what Cicero is saying is that only the wise, you see, only a person of wisdom, a man of wisdom, is the only one who can possess perfect moral goodness, right? Only a wise man or a man of virtue is exclusively in possession of moral goodness, and that wisdom cannot be separated from virtue. So what he's trying to say is that those who don't possess perfect wisdom cannot have perfect moral goodness, right? They cannot possess perfect moral goodness, and which is most of us, right? Most of us are individuals who cannot possess the perfect wisdom or the perfect wisdom, and because we don't have the perfect wisdom, hence we can never possess the perfect moral goodness. However, even though we are imperfect, even though we can't possess the perfect moral goodness, we can at least have a semblance, or we can at least possess a semblance of the perfect moral goodness. We can at least, you and I, imperfect human beings, can at least, even though we cannot possess the perfect moral goodness, we can at least possess a semblance or a likeness of the perfect moral goodness. We cannot possess the original moral goodness, but we can possess the look-alike or the duplicate version of the moral goodness. I hope you're getting my point, because this is the only way to break down, but then to make the viewers and the listeners understand what Cicero is trying to say. So what he's trying to say is that, well, you cannot possess the original thing, hence, however, because you cannot possess the original thing because you are not perfect, because you're not man of wisdom, and because you're not man of wisdom, you can never possess the real thing. However, you can at least possess the lower quality one, or lower quality thing, the same version but lower quality, or or the cheap one, or the duplicate one, or or look-alike. So in other words, for instance, you may like sports. Say for instance, you may like basketball, right? You may like basketball, but then what Cicero is saying is that, well, only a good sportsman, only a real talented sportsman such as LeBron James, he is the only one who can really play basketball really, really well. However, because you're not athletic at all, and then you're not even professional, at least for you, because you're not professional, you can at least try to become, you can mimic, you can possess the lower qualities of LeBron James. I hope you get my point. You see, or say for instance, you can't possess Mercedes, right? For instance, but then you can modify your vehicle to look like one. so that's exactly what he's. No, you may think these examples are exaggerated and then hyperbolical, but these are real things. That's what he's trying to say. I'm trying to use this example in order to show you what the two conceptions of morality are. The two conceptions of virtues, which Cicero is trying to, he's at pains to make us and his son understand what he's talking about. He's only saying that, for instance, you can't possess something, because you can't possess the diamond, you can possess a crystal, right? Something like that, you see. So crystal is a bit lower, not just lower, but like a lower quality than than diamonds, you see. So what is, for instance, I do not know how it is. I do not know, because I'm here in India, so I can only speak of what I see here in India. So for instance, here I saw one person. He owns a vehicle, right? He owns Mahindra Bolero, and then he modified his Mahindra Bolero to look like Mercedes G-Class, right? The SUV. So there you go. So that's a perfect example, right? So that's what Cicero is saying. You can't have the original one, Mercedes. Hence, you do possess the lower quality one. Like for instance, you modify your vehicle to look like Mercedes. However, it's not a Mercedes. You got my point, right? You may modify your vehicle to look like that person modified his vehicle to look like Mercedes G-Class. However, even though the modified vehicle looks like a Mercedes, it is not a Mercedes. You see. So, say for instance, the person who owns a Mercedes is the virtuous person, right? The perfect man. And the person who owns that Bolero is not a perfect man. You see? And then say the Mercedes G-Class is the perfect perfect moral goodness. And for the Polero modified to look like a Mercedes is the imperfect moral goodness. Or you can say that not imperfect, but you can say that as it can be seen as a semblance, a likeness of the Mercedes, a likeness of the moral goodness. So there you go. That's the thing. There's a real difference, right? There's a real difference. You can only see the semblance, the likeness of it. Or for instance, you may want, you know, how do I put this? You may want to, like most teenagers nowadays, they try to mimic their idols, right? They try to mimic, say for instance, if they like a sports star or a, you know, or a pop singer or an entertainer, right? They try to mimic them, but just because you mimic them does not make you to be like them, right? You're different, right? You can never be those whom you're trying to mimic. I can try to mimic like LeBron James, or I can try to mimic like Sachin Tendulkar, right? Cricket, or I may try to mimic like Lionel Messi, but I'm not Messi, right? I'm mimicking, but I'm not Messi. I'm not the original Messi. Messi is the original one. I'm not Messi. I'm just a duplicate Messi. But I'll be getting my point. So that's the two conceptions of virtues which he is trying to make his son aware of, right? So these are the common moral duties, right? These are just only appropriate. They are not right. These kind of appropriate acts or the lower conception of virtues are not perfect. They're just appropriate, right? This is a big distinction that you must remember, right? So these are very, very important distinctions which you must pay heed to, right? Because an appropriate act is something which is expected of you. However, to be right in an absolute sense, to be morally right is to be in possession of absolute perfection. Perfect. It must be that you are in possession of perfect virtue, right? In other words, a man of wisdom, and it is attainable only by even to execute, even to carry out, even to act, even to execute the virtuous act is only attainable by man of wisdom, right? Because wisdom has its own category. He is not saying it explicitly, but from my understanding, and this is something which is new, I think, and this is something I have not come across by any of the commentators on Cicero, or even for Aristotle, is that he's implicitly trying to say that wisdom has its own category of actions, right? Wisdom has its own category of actions, and these second-grade morals or second-grade virtues, which is speaking of the appropriate acts, these second grade has its own category of actions. In other words, the first grade level of virtues has its own category of actions, and the second class morality or second class virtues has its own category of actions. So for instance, courage, self-control, etc., which are actually propagated by Aristotle and even by Cicero, are not wisdom, are not the first grade virtues. They are the second grade virtues. To be courageous, to have self-discipline, to have self-control. These are second grade virtues. However, the first grade virtues, such as wisdom, right, absolute perfect virtue, this kind of virtues has its own category of actions, and those actions are far high and above, right? They rise above all else. It's not about courage. There's something else even sublime than courage. There's even more magnificent and magnanimous of a person's character than just courage. Because if you look at the character of Christ or the character of Buddha, right? The way they behave themselves, the way they carry themselves, is beyond courage, is beyond self-discipline. You will never say Buddha or Christ is a self-disciplined person. No. You will never say that Christ or Buddha is a courageous person. No. Because the word self-control or self-discipline or courage is far too unfair for a characters who possesses virtue in the most absolute sense, right? sublime would be the right word, right? Sublime, right? Even magnificence is not even the right word. There's something above and beyond magnificence and magnanimity and courage and self-control and temperance, right? This is what I feel. Obviously, I'm sure you're getting some of my own interpretation of Cicero, which I'm quite sure it's quite new. So what Cicero is saying is that wisdom has its own category of actions, which can only be possessed and executed by men of wisdom. That's perfect virtue. However, the second great virtues, the second great moral actions are actions which are appropriate. And those appropriate acts would be courage, self-control, self-discipline, temperance, all these things. Why? Because human beings, like most human beings like you and I, are far from perfect, right? And for us, even the word courage and self-control and self-discipline it looks as though they are the perfect virtue, right? But in reality, they are not. They look perfect. Why? Because from an imperfect perspective, like you and I, something that cleanses us of our imperfection will always seem perfect, even though they are far how to put this, far from being perfect virtues, far from being actions of perfect actions exemplifying and personifying absolute virtue, right? So this is essential for you to remember, and please remember it, right? So so what he's trying to say is that wisdom has its own category of actions, which are sublime, and actions which rises far and above all else. On the other hand, you have second grade morals such as courage and self-control and self-discipline. They may seem sublime, but in reality they are not. They only look sublime and perfect because we are imperfect, and because we are imperfect, we view anything that takes us a bit higher morally or ethically from where we are looks perfect, but in reality they are not perfect. They are far too low, right? Even the courage and self-discipline, they are far too low of a level when compared with sublimity of acts which are carried out by, say, for instance, Christ or Buddha, for instance, right? This is why, so for instance, right, I mean, you know this is why you see those who know art, those who know music, they have a different estimation of what normal or most common, what most people have opinions about arts and music. For instance, I'll tell you this: because we're imperfect, it's very easy for ordinary people, right? It's very easy for ordinary people like you and I, average ordinary people like you and I, to praise things which, even though they do not deserve praises, right? We tend to adulate and praise and sing praises about things which don't deserve to be adulated, or things which does not need to be praised. For instance, today's music, right? Compare today's music with music of the past, or today even compare today's abstract, like ugly paintings with the paintings of Leonardo da Vinci, or paintings of Michelangelo, right? Or Botticelli, right? Right? Yeah. So you get my point, right? You get my point. And compare the music, today's music, right? All this, all that crappy electronic music. Compare that with the music of Mozart, of Beethoven, or Haydn, or Bach, right? So you get the difference. For it's very easy for people who does not know much about music or art to praise things which don't deserve praises, to adulate things, right? Because they can't discover, because if you don't have enough, say for instance, knowledge, right, then you can't pinpoint the weaknesses of any particular piece of art or piece of music, right? Even if I bring in front of you a horrible piece of music or a horrible piece of art, you may sing praises, you may adulate a piece of art and music, even though the piece of music and art is not good. And of course, nowadays people say that we all have different tastes. No, that's wrong. That's just that's just a cop out, right? That's just a cowardly way of saying that's just cowardly way of trying to assert what is right, or what is beauty, or what is art, or what is a beautiful piece of music. So yeah, there are good music and bad music, and just as there are good paintings and bad paintings. So that's why. So this is one of the reasons, because we are imperfect, because it's easy for ordinary people like you and I to sing praises and adulate all the horrible music that we hear today, right? But if you compare that to those musics of, say for instance, of Beethoven or Bach, today's music is just ridiculously an assault to the senses, right? It's a complete assault. And even the paintings, look at the horrible paintings of modern art. It's absolutely horrendous, right? It's absolutely it's a monstrosity, right? Absolutely ugly. But then people sing praises about such kind of monstrous ugliness, and compare that with the paintings of Titan, or paintings of Leonardo, or paintings of Michelangelo, right? There's a huge difference. So there we go. And you see, so you can say that Mozart and Beethoven, they are the perfect virtues, and then today's music is the imperfect virtues. So that's what he's trying to say. That's what Cicero is trying to tell his son. So these are the second-grade moral goodness. Okay, so he starts off, right? So he starts off by talking about book 3. He starts talking about Polypus Scipio Africanus, right? Scipio Africanus. So he says that and this is where he is trying to first trying to make his son understand. He's trying to differentiate. He's trying to show perfect virtues from imperfect one, and then hence tell him that this is how I'm trying to differentiate, and this is what I'm trying to tell you, and this is the kind of virtue I'm trying to make you understand. And actually, these are the things which are quite relevant even in politics, right? Even in politics, you may ask, we are reading political philosophy, and here we are talking about ethics. Yeah, like I mentioned so many times in this series. Yeah, ethics has everything to do with politics, right? You can't. Today's version of political science, today's version of political philosophy is deprived of the very essence of politics, and that is ethics. And as long as we don't discuss ethics, politics is meaningless, right? Politics is when we deprive politics of ethics, then we are back to a very narrow, truncated, absolutely reductionist view of Machiavelli's politics and Thomas Hobbes's, John Locke's, Rousseau's politics. Right? These are the people who have done a real good damage to politics, right? To the study of politics. I'm not lying. Oh, I don't know. That's my opinion, but who knows? I may be wrong, right? But rarely do I think I'm wrong. Okay, nevertheless, coming back to the issue. Now, Cicero is trying to say that he tries to tell his son, right? He does not lecture his son regarding these are the kind of virtues I want you to do. No, he does not say that. He does not, give a long lecture about what he wants his son to behave, right? However, he tells his son, he tries to talk about this lower conception of virtue by using historical characters, using examples, right? Using examples to tell his son that this is the kind of behavior which I'm talking about, right? Because, I'm very well aware that what we have discussed now and what we are discussing now may seem very, how do I put it? May seem difficult to comprehend the concepts of this first class conception of higher level conception of virtue and the lower conception of virtue and appropriate and whatnot. So what Cicero is trying to tell his son is that and he's very smart. Right? Cicero is very smart. So he's trying to make his son understand those difficult concepts by illustrating to his son, by demonstrating to his son the kind of behavior that is expected of him, by giving him examples, illustration from history, illustrations of real life history, right? Illustrations of examples, true examples of great characters that have lived before them, right? And he uses real historical characters who personified and who manifested the kind of virtues which Cicero is trying to convey to his son, right? So he first uses an example of Scipio Africanus, right? So he says that I admire him, right? He's a man of great wisdom. He's an admirable character, right? So what he's saying is that even in his leisurely hours, right? Even when he's not working, even when he's not carrying out his official duties, even in his times of leisure, he taught his thoughts, right? He kept thinking about public business, right? He kept thinking about public business, how to go about, how to do it, and hence his mind was never unoccupied, right? He was never lonely, right? He was never idle. So he says, such is an excellence, right? This is an excellent character. This is the kind of things I want to aspire, right? Even Cicero says that I admire him so much that even I aspire to become like Africanus, right? I try to be and carry out those acts such as Africanus, because he was never alone, he was never idle, right? He was never unoccupied. He was always thinking of how to, of carrying out his public business, his carrying out his official duties, even in times of his leisurely hours, right? He was never unoccupied. And because he was never unoccupied, because he was never idle or alone or lonely, he was always how do I put it? He was always occupied with things that would benefit not just him, but also he was always occupied with things that is appropriate for him, appropriate for a person of his social status, to carry himself or herself. So, in other words, what Cicero is trying to tell his son is that, you see, in the world, right? In the world, there are good things and bad things, right? Not just good things and bad things, but then there are things as they are. We have to remember that there are very few can attain the man of wisdom, right? Very few can attain very few can become sages. Very few can become men of wisdom. However, there are also many things, and there are things that happens in life, right? Whether good or bad. But no matter what, we should always try to extract. We should always try to take the very best from any events of life, be it good or bad, right? Be it good or bad. We should always try to learn something good from it. We should always try to extract something good from it, right? And so he's trying to tell his son, and he's trying to tell his son that, you see, one of the most essential and important things which we should occupy ourselves, and which is very common in the world, is that there always seems to be a clash, right? There seems to be a clash because, and if you actually think about it, it's what Cicero is saying is quite true, and I think if you think about it, it's quite true even to this day, right? There's this apparent clash between what is expedient and what is morally right? What is morally right and what is expedient? Now, it is difficult for us to say, this is very interesting, right? The difference between expedient and morally right. Now, if you think about it, this has occurred in your life and in my life so many times. And of course, even the way the society behaves, even the way the society carries itself, even the values and those norms which the society sometimes make us feel that it is right. it keeps on telling us that. I mean, I'll tell you what I mean. You see, many a time in your life and in my life, I'm sure that we have come across certain events in our life where we had to where we had to choose, right? Where we had to pick between what is expedient for us and what is morally right. Something can be, we now in today's analysis, in today's world, in the world we live in today, in the times that we live in, we tend to say that morally right and expedient are two different things. What is expedient may not be morally right, and what is morally right cannot be expedient, right? Now, I want you to pay a close attention to this. Today, right? I'm going to repeat again. Today, in modern times, in the modern world that we live in, and I'm sure this is the case in most societies, regardless of the cultural difference that we may be brought up in, there's always this clash between what is morally right and what is expedient, right? So, for instance, are you going to betray your friend? Are you going to say if somebody comes and says, you know what, I'll give you $1,000 and betray your friend? This is just an example, all right? Don't think, $1,000 is too less, whatever the case may be. This is just an example. So somebody may come and tell you, you know what, this is the best example. During exams, right? I do not know how it is in Europe or America or whatnot, but here in India, especially here in Nagaland, whenever they give their exams, whenever they give their midterm exams or the final exams, students are usually faced with two choices, right? Should I pass my paper by cheating, or should I, because I don't know and I've not studied, should I just fail honorably? I'll try, even though I'll fail, but I'll try. I have not cheat. Imagine that you are even given the chance to copy from your friends, even though you have a chance to cheat and pass the exam. Which one would you do it? Now, in today's conception, in today's modern time, you may feel that this kind of question is a question between what is morally right and what is expedient. Now, expedient would be, I will cheat from my friends and then I'll pass the exam. That's the expedient. What is beneficial to us, what is advantageous for us. And the other question is it morally right? Right? Even if I cheat and pass, is it morally right? So a student is faced with a dilemma. A student in Nagaland today, a student in India today is faced with a dilemma, a conundrum, a moral conundrum. Should I pass by cheating, or should I fail or should I just fail and I will not cheat? Even though I have a chance to cheat, I will not cheat and I will fail honorably. Should I fail honorably or pass unethically? Right? Now this is a question. This is an interesting one. I think that's the best way to put it. And so the thing is, most people will, and most students do, and I know that most students would rather pass through unethical means than fail honorably, right? And of course nobody wants to fail. So what happens is that in most cases, and of course like the common sense notion, right? The common sense notion, and I'm using the word common sense from Gramsci's point of view, right? From Gramsci's perspective. So from the common sense point of view, you may say, okay, well, it's only expedient, right? You are a stupid fool if you don't just cheat and pass. Even when you have the opportunity to cheat, even though you're given the opportunity to cheat and hence pass the paper, it will be foolish of you if you don't cheat and pass. It will be foolish of you if you just fail honorably, right? There's no point trying to act all high morally. There's no need to act morally high, by not cheating and just failing, right? So the society's common sense, and the common sense of most men, most human beings, most people in any society, especially here in India and Nagaland, is that, it is only expedient, it is advantageous, it is in your self-interest to cheat and pass rather than fail right, rather than fail. Because you want to do something that is morally right, then something that is then you want to do something that is morally right rather than do something that is expedient for you. You see? So the question now becomes, which one should you do it? Right? So now the question is, what will you do? If you were that student, imagine that you have exams tomorrow. Right? You have exams tomorrow and you have not studied at all. Right? You have not studied at all. So now you go to the exam. So the day of exam comes, you are in the examination hall, and now you are faced with a conundrum. Now you know that you have not studied. You know that you don't know anything about the you have nothing to write for the exam, and you know that you're going to fail. But then it so happens that you also have a chance to pass your exam by cheating. Right? Say that the invigilator is not in the examination hall for 2-3 hours straight, right? And say for instance that even the invigilator has implicitly said, oh, you know what, you can just cheat and pass. Now the question is this: even though there's nobody to punish you for cheating, and you can actually get away with cheating, now what will you do? Will you cheat and pass, or will you just fail honorably? Right? Now this is the conundrum. This is a dilemma between morally right or expedient. Doing something that is morally right and doing something that is expedient. Doing something that is morally right but you'll pay the price, fail, or doing something that is expedient, morally wrong, or but advantageous for you. Right? So this is the question that Cicero is trying to deal in Book 3 of the Offices, and this, I think, is one of the most important questions in political philosophy, not just in political philosophy but in ethics and philosophy in general. And so, but this is the thing which we will discuss in the next lecture, and this is the question he starts with for his son, for Cicero's son. And then Cicero is very, very well aware that this is one of the most important questions that his son needs to understand in order to at least not become a virtuous person, because even Cicero knows that his son will not be a man of virtue, but at least lead an appropriate life. Right? So I'll see you soon, very soon, very soon.